right, welcome everybody to part 3 of our special miniseries podcast. We're doing in honor of Black History Month. I'm Sergeant Rolls, and we have with us today Chief Monk, our Wing Command Chief, Colonel Coggin, our Wing Commander, here to talk about the Black History Month and put some final thoughts on the observance as we wrap up the month of February. So welcome, guys.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us again.
And I also have Airman Snell here with me. She is our new PA, so she's going to be chiming in on some of our topics today as well. Hi.
Hello. Nice to be here.
All right, guys, before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything, I just want to share an accelerated timeline of our observance history so we kind of know where everything came from. So every year, the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, that's a mouthful, they issue a theme for the observance. So this year, the theme was Inspiring Change. So their goal was to bring about this observance, celebrating the contributions of African Americans in overcoming racial inequalities and to promote equal advancement within the Black community. So a little brief history. President Harry Truman in 1948 officially desegregated the armed forces. Prior to 1948, the armed services were segregated for training, operations, living conditions, all kinds of things. And it wasn't until 1964 that the first African American was permitted to enlist in the Arkansas National Guard. Black History Month initially started out as a week. That week actually coincided with Abraham Lincoln's birthday and Frederick Douglass' birthdays. So in 1976, President Ford turned the week into the full month that we know of today. So he turned it into that month and to give us additional opportunities to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area throughout our history. We have some African American accomplishments in the Arkansas National Guard. We have our retired Army Staff Sergeant Lily Moore Carter. She was the first African American female to be a full-time employee in the Arkansas Army National Guard. We have retired Colonel Berthel Thomas. He was the first African American to command a battalion in the Arkansas Army National Guard. We also have Major Magnolia Winkler. She was the first African American female officer. Chief Warrant Officer Gregory Settles. So he was the first African American to become a first sergeant and the Command Sergeant Major in the Army National Guard. So Command Sergeant Major, for anybody who doesn't know, is the highest enlisted rank in the Army. Lieutenant Colonel Philanthia Givens. So she was the first African American female to make the rank of Lieutenant Colonel and the first to serve as the Inspector General for both the 188th and 189th Wings. So she's had some significant accomplishments and she set a lot of standards. Last but not least, we have our very own Chief Monk. So she is the very first African American command chief that we've had in the wing and the first female command chief that we've had in the wing.
That is correct. That is correct.
So we are proud of that, and we are we want to make sure that everybody knows that. So very glad that we have been able to make that happen in our wing.
Thank you.
So okay, so that was just a brief history. Just wanted to tap on that lightly, and I'm sure there's so much more that we could talk about. But let's talk about what we're here to talk about today. So we're here to talk about Black History Month. So the first question is, Black History Month, what does this mean to you guys as individuals?
Well, to me, I call it the 3 hours, remembrance, reflection, and a reminder. Remembering how things were, and to reflect on how things have come to be, and just a reminder how things can always go back if you're not careful. So that's what Black History means to me. It showcases a lot of the history. It showcases, well, I grew up in southern Arkansas, El Dorado, so I was shown a lot of racism, a lot of diversity where I grew up. And so Black History reflects how far we've come, because I'm sitting here now as the first Black female command chief. So that's a reflection on what's to be in the future. So it's a sense of hope for those when we celebrate Black History. But we have to make sure that we're celebrating it and making sure that we're getting our point across and making sure the intent, like Colonel Coggin said on his last podcast, make sure we get the intent for why we're serving, why we're celebrating Black History. So that's important. We can say that February is Black History Month all day long, but we have to make sure that the intent behind why we're celebrating needs to be sent out to those young airmen coming above and behind me, so then they can reflect back on what it is.
I think it's really well put, Chief. The reflection part really resonates with me as someone who's had the opportunity to live in a few different ethnic groups, shall we say, whether it was living in suburban Massachusetts where it was everyone really looked like me, and whether I was living in very southern Arizona and not everyone really looked like me, where I was really in a deeply Hispanic community. It allows the month allows us to reflect on, like you said, where we came from. And I really liked what you said about remembering. But to me, I know you meant this, but I want to make sure we verbalize it. It's also remembering we still have a lot further to go.
Yes, we do.
And I think that's what I think the month really allows us to focus on is reflect. I love it, you know what I mean? And then also remember that we got a lot further to go.
How do you guys think we can use this observance to teach our new airmen or our newer generation?
Well, we have to begin about learning to talk about it, to do a lot of communicating. We do have the diversity and inclusion working group here at the base. We also have a diversity council that we have here with the 189th. And we have to make sure that we're telling a story that needs to be told. Quite often we have those meetings and you can count the number of people that are in there. So we, I think as leaders, need to ensure that members in the wing are aware of those meetings that we have. And you can't enforce people to do what they don't want to do, but you have to also make sure that we're spreading that word, putting that information out for people to understand. Because a lot of people don't quite understand why we're celebrating Black History Month. They just know the history. They don't know why we're celebrating it. So I just think that we need to do a better job communicating and putting the story out there.
Okay. So, and on top of that, we want to talk about these difficult conversations.
Correct.
Sometimes it's necessary to have a difficult conversation. So what does that mean, and how can we do that, and how can we make that better?
Yeah, my charge to the wing is, to make the difficult conversations commonplace, make it normal, and don't make it seem like it's a conversation we have to have, and we have to close the door, and we have to be in the perfect mood, and everything's got to be said. Like, this has to be something that's if I like to say, it's an arrow in our quiver that we often go to. It's not something unique that we go to. For me, it wasn't easy. And I'm not trying to say it is easy to make these conversations commonplace, but for me, the big thing that I had to change was when I was growing up, again, in the places that I grew up, what I was always taught by teachers and counselors and all this thing is like, well, we just have to get to a spot where we're ignoring the color of our skin. And that's what I was ingrained as a kid. It's like, we just have to get to a spot where we're ignoring the color of our skin. And I think for a lot of us, in my generation at least, that grew up to mean, well, if I'm talking about people's skin color, then I'm doing it wrong because I was always taught to ignore it. So now we're not ignoring it, and now we're trying to talk about it. Well, I think what got lost along the way is, while the intent of what they're trying to teach us when I was a kid was the intent was pure, we realized that just not talking about it was not nearly enough to solve the problem of what the history of slavery in this country brought about, and that we had to have those conversations to solve it. We just couldn't ignore it to solve the problem. And so I know for me, I had to change that mindset in my head where I was always taught, well, just ignore the skin color and we're going to be great. I'm like, nah, it's not enough. And clearly it's not enough. And we have to have these conversations to solve the problems that this country made for itself. So I know that's been a big mindset change in my mind, and I'm not sure it's going to help anyone else, but I know that's what's helped me.
So as far as difficult conversations go, have you guys had to have a difficult conversation? How did you handle it? And maybe something like that will help somebody who also needs to have this difficult conversation.
Well, you have to have the conversation, first of all. You have to be open-minded, and you have to listen, because what I feel, maybe Colonel Coggin might not feel the same way. So you have to be respectful for that individual at that moment. Sometimes we can overreact on some things, And that's okay. That's part of that's part of conversating. But you got to have the conversation. You have to be able to listen. You have to be able to, of course, it's hard. Like I told one individual and that they asked me, they had the hard conversation. She just didn't relate. And that's okay. That's okay. I would appreciate a person coming to me because they don't relate and kind of make them understand where I'm coming from than to not have it at all and just assume. So I just think we just need to have that conversation, and I have been part of those hard conversation back when Chief Rowe was the command chief. We as a chief group had the conversation about George Floyd. So, of course, that was difficult. We just didn't know how to talk about it. But in the same situation, in the same instance, we did talk about it. So that was a step in the right direction. So we can't shy away from it. You can't walk on it and be eggshells when you're talking about that because this is reality. So you have to talk. You have to have that conversation. And so when you don't have that conversation, that's kind of where you're going back. And we still have a ways to go, like Colonel Coggin said before, because we're still not having that conversation. Mm-hmm. We can't just have it for like a day. We got to have it a week, a month, a year.
Built into
Yes.
the normalcies of
Correct.
day-to-day life.
Right.
Yeah, some of the difficult conversations I've had have been, with the leaders, especially those that, shall we say, are get frustrated with the focus on diversity. And they're like, for example, in a hiring action, I just want to hire the best person for my job, period. I don't want to do anything else. I don't have to think about skin color. I don't have to think about diversity. I just want to hire the best person for my job. And I don't think there's anything immoral about that. I think we can all relate to that. Like, the only thing I want is the best person for my job. And so those tough conversations can then be about, well, why isn't diversity good for your job?
Right.
And I don't think anyone has a good answer to that question, which tells me there's something more there. If you can't answer me why diversity isn't part of why it's good to have someone in that job, because one of the reasons that I love having Chief Monk in the position that she's at is that now people in our community on base, our community off base, can see, wait a minute, I can grow up to be this person. And we're talking about a huge part of our population, our recruiting population. This goes at readiness. This goes at being best at our jobs as a military, is to get after our entire recruiting base. Mm-hmm. And so do we only want to hire someone for the color of their skin? Of course not. Of course not. But is diversity part of what we want to have in our military? Absolutely, because it's a force multiplier. It gets after readiness. It gets after our recruiting base. It makes us stronger. As I said before, and I just don't look at, ethnicity when I want to talk about diversity. I'm talking about diversity of thought, too. That is hugely important to me when we're having this conversation about diversity is, even if we look alike, if you come from a different place, you have a different background, you come from a different part of the Air Force, you come from a different service, that is something I truly value because I don't want to sit in my office and have people reply to me, oh, great idea, boss. I'm like, no, I want people to tell me, hey, boss, have you thought about this? Because from my background, this is that. And so to me, diversity, whether it's different backgrounds, different ways of thought, is just so powerful and a force multiplier that, it should be part of our decision matrix. Of course, it's not the only thing. Of course, I want the best person for the job. But having that hiring board where you have that diversity on the panel, diversity of background, diversity of thought, is so important to us as a military to make sure that we're getting after those things I already mentioned.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's important to make sure you have different ideas and personalities that bring something to the table. That's what makes an idea great. You can't get 4 people together who all have the exact same idea and come up with something amazing because we all have the same idea. What other ways do you guys think we can use this observance or other events like this to bring more people to the Guard and show them what we're capable of, what we can do for the community and for them?
Just by showing, our ability to recognize it, our ability to celebrate it within our own ranks, I hope would have the effect in our community that, wow, this means so much to them, despite the fact that we have a C-130 training unit going on, despite the fact that we have a cyber mission going on, despite the fact that we're preparing airmen to deploy around the world, they're taking time out to celebrate this. This must be really important to them. And so we, and I'm looking at the people at this table here, my public affairs team, we need to make sure that that word that this is important to us gets out, not just internally, but externally to those outside the fence, because I want the community to understand that this is important to us.
Yeah, we just have to be seen. I'm always going out and women and Black, when they do see me, there is a sense of pride and a sense of feeling good that they see me in this uniform and look at my stripes. And, I even had one guy come up to me and say, "Oh, I know you've been in for a while. You got a lot of stripes." So that makes me proud. And so I just have to display me as a Black female because not only am I promoting race, I'm promoting gender as well. And so that goes a long way in the military.
So growing up in the military, have you seen the Air Force change?
Yes.
Yes, let's talk about that. So,
Yes.
because I've only been in for 19 years, and just
Yes.
in that short time, I have seen a lot of changes too. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how was it dealt with and tolerated? How did you react to certain things? Or, I could ask you 100 questions before you had a chance to answer me. So, what was it like?
Well, I came in the military in 1982, so you can only imagine. And my first duty assignment was Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington State, where there was a lot of people that did not look like me. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult, my first assignment. I had a lot of good leaders that helped me along the way, but I can tell you that it was not easy. The thing I think that helped me get through it is I was good at my job. And I learned my job. I did well with my job, and I wanted more. So during that time, it was difficult. There was disparity. You knew it, but I credit my parents a lot of that because I do have biracial family members, and so it was not like I wasn't used to it because I was, but they weren't used to me, and being a Black girl from Southern Arkansas coming to Washington State, it was difficult, and so I tried to get out of there. I did everything I could, put in all the remotes, because I just didn't want to be there. But I didn't let that dampen my spirit because I had a good supervisor at the time. He's retired Chief Gary Conklin that always had my back and that always tried to uplift my spirits because I guess he kind of knew that I just didn't felt like I fit in. But so that kind of paved the way for me. And then when I went to other assignments, things got a little bit better because I moved up in the ranks. The job I had was traffic management TMO, so there were not a lot of Black females, a lot of Blacks period in TMO. So, it was hard for me to make friends being a Black female because I left Fairchild and then I went overseas to Sicily. So once again, And it was difficult, like I said, but it didn't dampen my spirits. It did. It kind of encouraged me to be better. Right. But I can rest assured it wasn't easy. It wasn't even easy when I got here in the year 2000. So that lets you know that hasn't been very long ago. But I credit good supervisors and good leaders that saw in me that I had the potential to do better. That I was a good airman, and that I did my job and I did it well, and I think I helped motivate a lot of airmen that were having issues. It kind of helped me along the way. I credit that to where I am today.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Something I want to highlight there. I mean, I don't want to. In no way am I trying to say there's any excuse for racism in the military. But it's amazing how important, like she was remembering her first line supervisor from her first job and how that supervisor allowed her to get past incredible hurdles that she had to cross.
Yeah.
So just wanted for all the people out there who supervise and lead, right? You have to remember, you have to be able to relate to your airmen.
Correct.
That is your job. And it is not you sit in your office and your airmen have to find a way to relate to you. That is not how this works.
Right.
And the fact that she had a supervisor that was able to relate to her and get her to her highest potential in a time in the military was a lot more difficult when it comes to racial divide than today. I think speaks volumes for the importance of the supervisors out there, regardless of the challenge we're discussing, whether that's race, gender, work performance, stressors, resiliency, et cetera. I hope people hear that story, that part of that story, that, it's doesn't matter how great we are up in the corner office, and I guarantee you there are days we are not. It's that supervisors out there that are really making a difference.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I had a supervisor who she was always there for me. She was very hands-on. She always made sure she was asking me how I was doing. I was a single parent when I came in, so it was nice to have somebody there to confide in, or go to if you're having trouble with something, or if you just are on the edge of breaking down sometimes. So I know the importance of that, but I agree. I hope people listen to that, especially. In what ways did your supervisor give you the tools? Like,
he never made me feel different. Mm-hmm. He always credited me for the work that I did, and that played a big part in my progression. And I, in fact, have done that with the people that I've supervised. I, like Colonel Coggin said, I got to know the people. I can, even now, look back at some of the people down in LRS, my home, that I can tell you about their family, their kids. I've been knowing some of them since they graduated high school. And so we still got that connection. And I think that that's very, very important, because I honestly feel that I'm somebody, even now as the command chief, can go down there and they can still have that conversation with me, just like we were talking when I worked down in LRS as a tech sergeant. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's nice. It's not a hard thing to do either.
Right.
It's as simple as being like, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? Do you have kids? Mm-hmm. Like what do you like to do outside of work? And you never know what they're going to tell you and how you can find a way to relate to that. So, I personally don't think it's a hard thing. Me and Airman Snell did that the first day.
Yes,
it wasn't quite the first day, but it was one of the first days. We went to lunch, and we were talking about where we grew up, how we grew up, and all different kinds of things, and about Central America and how much we like going there. And it was a great conversation. So
it's something I call part of being a proactive leader.
Right.
And because now, when something comes up in Airman Snell's life, you now don't have to get the background behind it before you can figure out what tools to bear to help solve the problem. Mm-hmm. And now you can just go into solving the problem versus having to ask all those questions now to get around to it.
Yep.
And during that process, hopefully we've made Airman Snell feel like she's a valued member of the team, right?
Yeah, of course.
And that her contributions matter. So, great discussion. Chief, did you ever see General CQ's Brown video, What Am I Thinking About?
Yes.
That was hugely powerful.
It was.
Yeah.
That was a good video.
It was. It was good. And that should be something that, we could show to airmen, because I think they need to see that. I think that, I know I was proud seeing General Brown.
Yeah.
I am even proud seeing Chief Bass, because she's a female. And it makes me proud when I see leaders in different, where they are now, because, or even look at me. I look at myself sometimes, and I am proud because I try to be the best me for me. And as long as I'm the best me for me, then I can be a better person for someone else. And so it makes me proud. And so I have to lead by example. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of where I am. I'm proud of how long I've been in the military. I'm proud of where I've come from. And I think that says a lot for the Black airmen around here.
I think that there's something to say for seeing some systemic racial issues.
Yes.
And seeing how the Air Force has grown from the Army Air Corps, where even the military was segregated for some reason, and they were treated so differently to the Air Force in the 60s, where, okay, we're not segregated anymore, but we're still treated differently, to the 80s, where we're just now starting to accept and acknowledge and acclimate to this integration, and then to now, where essentially we're still trying to make this a normal part of society, and we're still trying to promote African Americans in the Black community through Black History Month, or trying to make sure that we spread that diversity within our leadership, and it's just interesting to see how like it's been so ingrained throughout history that there's a struggle there, and there's something that's not quite lining up. But at the same time, now it's so much different, so much better to see that happening, even though it's not quite there yet. Yes. Seeing it happen.
Yeah, we have a lot. We've done a lot of work, not with diversity, not only with race, but with gender as well. Because I'm pro girl. But we do have.
Just realized I'm surrounded by three of them right now. But.
Yeah, but we do have a long way to go. We do have a long way to go. When you looking back, long after I'm gone, just looking at our force management, who would maybe take my place, or what we kind of got in line for that. So, like I said, there's still some work to do, but we're getting there. I do believe we're getting there.
But all right, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming and giving me your personal experiences. I know you got a lot to do, so it means a lot to me and the Airmen of the Wing that you guys would take the time to share all of this with us. I do want to close with a quote from Maya Angelou that actually came from our Undersecretary of Defense, Mr. Gilbert Cisneros. So, history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. She said exactly what you said. We have to acknowledge what's happened in the past, but that doesn't mean we can't change the future. I think one of the best things for us to do is what we're striving to do right now, is to bring awareness, learn to talk about it, make it a normal part of our conversations. If there's something that's going on or if something needs to be addressed, just say it. I know we have a long way to go, and I really hope, mindsets like yours can improve on what we have started already. So, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Jessica.
We are mission-ready airmen, providing premier training to the C-130 and cyber enterprises, capitalizing on partnerships to support the state and defend the nation. Our vision is to be a diverse family of airmen, dedicated, adaptive, and empowered to lead.